Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second video for Section 2, Chapter 1 of the Algebra 2 book from McGraw-Hill. Again, this section is entitled Properties of Real Numbers. The first video covered the number sets that make up the real numbers. Now we're going to talk about properties of real numbers, which therefore are properties of all of the subsets, the rational numbers, the irrational numbers, the integers, the whole numbers, and the counting numbers, or natural numbers. So we start off with the commutative property. What this says in words is that numbers, and we already should know this, can be added or multiplied in any order. We don't necessarily have to work from left to right. So the commutative property of addition would read A plus B is equal to B plus A. It doesn't matter whether we add A to B or B to A. We'll get the same answer either way. The same thing would apply to multiplication. A times B is the same as B times A. Now that's for two numbers. That's called the commutative property. If we advance that out to talk about three numbers, that's still the same sort of property. Okay, numbers can be added and multiplied in any order. And the associative property deals with more than two numbers. So for addition, what it is saying is that it doesn't matter whether we add A and B first or B and C first. We'll get the same answer either way. So the quantity A plus B plus C is equal to A plus quantity B plus C. And the same thing applies to multiplication. If we have three values being multiplied, it doesn't matter which order we multiply them in. We can multiply the first two or the second two, and it will give us the same result either way. Our next property is one that we use a lot in Algebra 1. It's called the distributive property. It says that if we have a value times a sum, A times B plus C, we can rewrite that as the sum of the products of A times B plus A times C. We've all done it 1,000 times. We can distribute that A to multiply the B and the C. Now, this next one is one that you have definitely done, but has probably never been formalized for you. That's called the identity property. For addition, that says I can take any number, add 0 to it, and I will still have that same number. As such, 0 is known as the additive identity. Now for multiplication, we have something very similar. It says that if I take A and I multiply it by 1, it is still A, which means that 1 is known as the multiplicative identity, because when I multiply a number by 1, it does not change its value. So 0 is the additive inverse, and 1 is the multiplicative inverse. In addition, we have what's called the inverse property. Okay? The inverse property of addition basically states that every number, every real number, has an opposite. Except, of course, for the additive identity. What it's saying is that for every A, there is a negative A, such that if you add them together, you will get a 0. In other words, negative A would be known as the additive inverse. The more common phrase that we've used is the opposite. Okay? For multiplication, we say every real number except for 0 has a reciprocal. In other words, for every number a, when a is not equal to 0, can be multiplied by 1 over a to get the multiplicative identity 1. 1 over a is known as the multiplicative inverse of a, or the more common word, the reciprocal. Okay, that is where this video is going to stop. Our next video will cover a few applications.